Time for another weekly stock market forecast. Here we go. This is week number 8 out of 52 for the year. That's February 20th through 24th. It's a shortened week this week with the markets being closed on Monday for President's Day. So only 4 days trading this week, but we'll make do and see what we can get out of it. All right, so let's get to the year-to-date performance. The NASDAQ QQQ is still in the lead, just shy of 14%, followed by the Russell's IWM. And of course, the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF, up just shy of 6%. And the DIA is still in last place, up only 2%. All right, so let's take a look at our first major market, the Russell 2000. Let's kick it off with the monthly chart. As we zoom in, we can see the futures chart and the IWM, that's the ETF, pretty much look identical. Not really any major change from last week. It did rally up a little bit and start to come down. So we have seen a little bit of a downward move on that. But overall, we can see that downward trajectory starting to go sideways here more recently, really kind of stuck in between a range. And you can see that more clearly on the weekly chart. As we look at the weekly futures of the Russell, there's that range that I was talking about. So it's really from 1700, that's the support area, up to about 2100, that's the resistance area. That's that range bound area, or it's really gone neutral, just stuck in between those two support and resistance areas. However, I will say price did just recently rally up into that resistance about a couple weeks ago and has dropped down since then. So that's that bearish location that we see there, and it has dropped down since then. So basically that resistance worked just as planned. And you can see that in the IWM as well, same exact concept there. It's range bound, this time from about 160 to 210. Price did rally up into that resistance and has pulled back just a little bit slightly from that resistance area. So overall, right now, we'd say it's definitely more bearish according to the weekly and monthly chart. But if we look at the daily chart now on the futures, last week we talked about price dropping down into that support area, and we were expecting a rally from that. That happened. We did get the rally from that support area. Not a very big one though, just a little bit of a rally for a few days there. Had a little bit of pullback, kind of just hanging out there right now. No real clear dominant direction, either up or down. So next week's actually going to be pretty critical because it's either going to drop below that support area or rally above the resistance area, or just kind of bounce somewhere in between that 1900 to 2000 support and resistance area right there, which is a pretty tight range for that futures market there. So time will tell. We'll see what happens. It'll break out at some point, one direction or the other. And that's really what we're looking for, is a dominant directional move. We can see most recently, for really this whole year, it has been in an uptrend. We have seen the bulls take control here. It just hasn't quite traded or gone above with any real force and power above that weekly 2100 area. And that's a really strong resistance area right now. It's having a hard time getting through that. And you can see the same thing on the IWM, the Russell ETF, same exact concept. Price goes into that resistance, about that $200 area, drop down quite a bit from there into the 190 support. We did get a nice little bounce out of that. So hopefully some of you guys got some bullish action on that. All right, let's move our attention to the NASDAQ. On the monthly chart, we can see that bearish trend and sentiment still is in play. That support area about the 11,000 mark did work out so far okay. It's just not really getting much follow through right now. You can see the same on the QQQ. Yes, that support area at the 280 did work it a little bit. It hasn't had any follow through though. So we can say that yes, it had a rally, but it was a pretty minor rally, a small rally. You can see that better on the weekly chart here. Price came down to that 11,000 mark, and it did rally for several weeks up into the 12 and 13,000 resistance area up there. And so now that we're in the bearish location, in fact, you have two resistance areas there, or two supply areas there. That's quite a bit of resistance, quite a bit of supply for the NASDAQ to be able to chew through and break out even higher above that 14,000 mark. That's going to be a tough job for the NASDAQ to be able to do. So we'll see what happens here. But right now it is in the bearish location. I'm still in my short position. We'll see how that plays out. You can see the same thing on the QQQ, bearish location right into that $300 resistance or supply area there. So we'll see if we get our pullback down to about that 270, 280 range, or does it rally higher next week up into about the 330 resistance, and then we should see a pullback from there as well, which would take it right up into about that 13,500 to 14,000 range on the resistance area in the futures market, which again, is going to be some pretty good solid resistance up there. We'll see how it plays out. Be ready for either scenario. Like I said, personally, I'm short right now based on the bearish environment that we're seeing in, price being in resistance. But I also have my stops in place in case price rallies and heads higher. So I'm covered on that. On the daily chart, we can see really just kind of in between that support and resistance area up there. So it did come up into resistance at the 12,800. We did see it drop down from there, getting closer to that 12,000 support area there. Not quite there yet, kind of really in between those two resistance and support areas right there. So no major play on this one yet. Same thing on the QQQ. No real decision being made on here because it's in between those support and resistance areas. So I'm neither buying nor selling. I'm waiting for price to either get in support or back up into resistance to make any real trading decision on that. So that's our NASDAQ. Let's move on into the S&P 500. Very similar, in fact, on the S&P. On the monthly chart, still, downtrend, mildly bearish right here. Prices had, a few months of a rally up from that support area, about the 3,500. And now we're starting to see that consolidation, that weakness start to come right back in. You can see it really well in the weekly chart where price rallied up into resistance, about that 4,200 area right there. So that put it in the bearish location. Same thing on the SPY, the S&P 500 ETF. Same exact concept. Price rallied up into resistance. It's still neutral or range bound between that 420 resistance and that 350 support. So as long as it's stuck in that range, okay, that's our play. That's what we get. We can sell short at the 420. We can buy down there at the 350, 360 range. And that's our play. And until it gives us a dominant direction, a clear and compelling directional move up or directional move down, we're stuck in trading these ranges. Once it does give us that definite uptrend or definite downtrend, then we can play the trend trades. Basically, right now, we're focused on playing those extreme highs and lows. On the daily chart, price, you can see, rallied up into that resistance, and we did get that turning point. It did start to come down. Not a really big turn on this, at least not yet anyway. Really, price is consolidating, kind of going back and forth. We can see some slightly lower lows and lower highs on that daily chart, but nothing really drastic. Still in that bearish location, so odds are it'll go down. But the longer it hangs out there, we start to see some buyers step up. It may very well break out to the upside, but right now the odds are favoring the bears. All right, and then on the last one there, the SPY, same concept. Price rallied up into that bearish location. So again, we're just waiting for price to see if we can get a dominant move down or a dominant move up. I will say this, though, price is really kind of hanging out around that 410 resistance area, and we haven't really seen a big push down, a violent move down, a big red candle, a big drop candle. Now, I got to step back and say, well, I wonder why. Because if that resistance was really, really strong, you'd think it would have had a bigger drop by now. So when I look at something like this, I'm thinking, we might be heading up higher again here. Let's just see if this thing can rally and go a little further, deeper into that weekly resistance area, which it certainly may do. So keep your eyes out for that. That very well may happen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned next week for the next market outlook. Have a great week trading, everyone. God bless and good trading.